The president of the Correspondents Association is a guy named Eugene Daniels. I've talked about him before. He was with Politico. He just decamped over to MSNBC. But he hired this left-wing comedian. Her name was Amber Ruffin. And she was very clear. She did a tour with him, a media tour, where she said, basically, I don't like Trump. I'm going to skewer the guy. I'm going to do all this.
Like, I'm not 100% interested in being like, ha, you're here. Look at your stupid head. You're burned. I care that, like, you're kind of a bunch of murderers. I mean, so like they were like, you need to be, equal and make sure that that you give it to both sides and blah, blah, blah. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be freaking doing that, dude.
That's people who support MAGA, murderers. And she has no intention of being fair. So they unanimously canceled her this weekend after she did this video, claiming somehow they don't want to have a partisan comedian, which they chose. Don't ever complain about the media again if you go to that dinner. If you go to that dinner, you're part of the problem. All right, folks, it is day 70. Can you believe that? Just over 2 month mark of the Trump administration. And like most weekends, there's a lot happening, a lot to talk about over the weekend, but then a lot to look forward to. Let me just start with sort of my favorite pet project. The shakeup in the White House briefing room and over at the White House Correspondents Association. It was huge what happened this weekend. And let me kind of walk you through what happened. So the White House Correspondents Association, which, as I've said before, has these limited rules about who can belong to it. They limit that. That's the one thing that you have to understand more than anything else. They choose who can belong and not. And then they exhibit all this power over who gets to go in the pool, or they used to anyway, and who sits where. And I'm going to get to all that. But you have to fundamentally understand that at the beginning, that they set the rules with respect to membership. So if you can't get in, you can't affect change, right? Anyway, because all these new independent journalists aren't part of the White House Correspondents Association, nor can they in a lot of cases because of the membership criteria. So what the White House is doing, Caroline Leavitt and the team over there, is so huge. But let me just back up for a second and explain this. So they have this annual dinner where you know that a bunch of D-list celebrities show up, and they all come under the guise of trying to promote the First Amendment or honor it or whatever. But basically, it's just a dinner where they make fun of Republicans and Donald Trump. And anyway, the president of the Correspondents Association is a guy named Eugene Daniels. I've talked about him before. He was with Politico. He just decamped over to MSNBC. But he hired this left-wing comedian. Her name was Amber Ruffin. And she was very clear. She did a tour with him, a media tour, where she said, basically, I don't like Trump. I'm going to skewer the guy. I'm going to do all this. But he didn't care because that's his view too, right? And he's now over at MSNBC. But Taylor Budowich, the deputy chief of staff that oversees communication, shared this clip over the weekend that I want to play for you, where she continues to be on this media tour talking about how she's going to handle herself at the dinner. Take a look.
Well, maybe you could do that for the White House correspondents. Just change it up this year.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, God. Okay, so will anyone from the administration be attending? How much do you actually know about who will be in attendance? Do you get, like, the rundown?
I'm sure that I will at some point.
You will.
I know the news organizations that will be
Yeah.
attending. I don't think the people confirm until quite a bit later. I don't necessarily, like, I'm not 100% interested in being like, ha, you're here. Look at your stupid head. You're burned. I care that, like, you're kind of a bunch of murderers. I mean, so like they were like, you need to be, equal and make sure that that you give it to both sides and blah, blah, blah. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be freaking doing that, dude. Under no circumstance.
Okay. All right. So I mean, you get the point. She doesn't want to be fair. She's going to go after Trump. She thinks they're murderers. That's people who support MAGA, murderers. And she has no intention of being fair. So they unanimously canceled her this weekend after she did this video, claiming somehow they don't want to have a partisan comedian, which they chose. But here's the other part that they're not telling you. One, that video sparked it, right? Where she was clear that she had no intention of doing this, and they couldn't hide from it because she's now on video saying it. So at no point could they ever say, oh, well, we intended for this to be fair or whatever. No, it never was going to be. And then she doubled down on it. But here's the bigger point that I want you to understand. She's still going to get paid because she has a contract and she didn't technically do anything wrong, right? She's just expressing who she was, and she was the same person when they hired her. So if you go to this dinner as a Republican lawmaker or as a conservative or media outlet or correspondent or whatever, you are complicit. Do you understand that? They're still paying her. That money, those thousands of dollars that are get paid for a seat, they're paying her. You paid for her. If you buy a seat, and so for all these Republicans who, oh, well, it's not. Yes, it is. You are funding this. You're funding it. And I think this is unbelievable. Now, thankfully, the folks at Substack are doing a counter-programming dinner that night, a black tie dinner, honoring and celebrating independent media. I'm going to go to it. I think that'll be great. Let's celebrate independent media. Let's not make it one-sided. Let's have fun. I'm excited, and thankfully they're stepping up to the plate. You want to go to dinner with no comedian, to sit with 3,000 people in the ballroom so you can take pictures of D-list celebrities? God bless you. But by the way, don't ever complain about the media again if you go to that dinner. If you go to that dinner, you're part of the problem. But it gets better, because here's where they took it to a new level. Over the weekend, news leaked out that Caroline Leavitt and the White House press team are undoing the seating chart. Now, let me just walk you back on this. These 49 seats in the briefing room, 7 rows of 7. Since at least 3 decades ago, the White House press office gave up. They said, I don't want to get into seating assignments. We're just going to let you, the White House Correspondents Association, do it. So they made the front row, the AP, the wires, the Washington Post, the NBCs, the big guys. And then they move it back. And as you see, when Caroline does briefings, and I did the same, if you don't get an assigned seat, you can sit on the sides. But, you know, most of these press secretaries will call in the front row or two. They put their little name tag down on the bottom. Like, it's our seat. It's not your seat. It is a government room. It is taxpayer finance. These folks in the press don't own it. They have no right to these seats. The room is owned by taxpayers. It is unbelievable that they think that they get, because their existence in their little silly elitist exclusive club, that they get to determine who sits where. No. Now, there's rumors that they're going to put out a new seating chart. I think it should just be a free-for-all. You want to get there early? Get there early. You don't? You don't. Why should anyone get to save a seat because they're the Associated Press or NBC or the Washington Post? Go to open seating. That's how I would do it. I give them huge kudos. I put out a tweet yesterday celebrating this, because they're finally showing that they're not in charge anymore. These other folks have a right to have a seat. Why did they not get to sit, even though they probably have a larger audience than a lot of these third-rate organizations? Unbelievable. By the way, you might remember in November, I put out a column in the Hill newspaper, and I sort of laid out advice for the incoming press secretary. And I kind of thought to myself, I wanted to go back and reread it yesterday. And it's interesting. I said, go beyond the front row. The front row of the briefing room consists of left-wing legacy media, ABC, NBC, CBS, Associated Press, CNN, New York Times, etc. Reestablish the importance of regional and local reporters that live and work in communities where voters actually live. Don't get caught up in the DC scene. You'll have tons of new friends and invitation to various events. Trump was right not to attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The White House Correspondents Association is an outdated left-wing organization. It's your briefing, not theirs. You set the rules, not them. Now, they might have probably going to do this anyway, but I'm just so glad to see it happen, and I'm excited that that's where this thing is headed. Over the weekend, for the first time, at least that I'm aware of, Susie Wiles, the incoming chief of staff, gave an interview and a tour to Laura Trump. I want to show you this. It's kind of cool. I mean, it just gives you some window into who she is as a person and how she operates. She showed off her office and talked about the meetings that they had there. Take a look.
Let's see what we got here. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know.
I pinch myself in the morning.
I ever came in here. Oh, and you have a beautiful fire?
Yeah, our fire days are probably dwindling because
Wow.
it's getting warm.
It came like this, or how did we do this office?
Actually, not. My predecessor, who was a wonderful guy, had a particular style, bought all his own furniture. So when I got here, it was empty. And so, while daunting, it allowed me to kind of...
You had to start from scratch
Yes,
in here.
so I got to really put my own touch on it. I have a table that seats 8 because there are always 8 at it. And we start early and go till, late. A lot of the staff have young children. So we try to pack a lot into the middle of the day, and then I can always work before or after. So we try to accommodate that. But this is a place of really good meetings. The president's been down here once, which is more than he ever went down here in the past administration.
All right, that's great. I mean, it's so cool to see how she talks and operates, because it's a window into how she's running this White House. They have these meetings. I love how accommodating it is. It's like, hey, we don't need to stay late just to do stuff. You have young kids, and let's get the work done. Anyway, I think it's a fascinating thing. Also, over the weekend, I don't know how about you guys spent your weekend. It's beautiful here in Northern Virginia. Beautiful. I mean, little overcast, but I thought this is a time to get out. I was doing some errands, running around. I attended a funeral of a good friend, Tony Dolan. I mentioned him on the show. And by the way, Vince Haley, the policy director at the White House, who was Tony's boss, gave this eulogy, my friends, that I have never heard a eulogy that well delivered, and a tribute to somebody the way that Vince Haley delivered for Tony Dolan. I joked with him afterwards. I said, Vince, if I start sending you stuff now, will you write my eulogy? That good. I hope to God that at some point I inspire enough people to think the way that people did of Tony Dolan, to allow a eulogy to deliver the way it is. But anyway, that being said, I couldn't help. There's a Tesla dealership about a mile down the road from me. And I saw that they were doing this day of action, this Tesla takedown day of action. This is how they're going to spend a beautiful Saturday in Northern Virginia. So I went down, and before I did, it was funny because I looked out and I saw, there were tweets. In fact, the Attorney General of Florida James Ottomeyer put out a tweet saying, hey, we're going to monitor this. Good for you guys. With all the violence that's happening, scratching cars, hurting people, violence at the Tesla dealerships, whatever. But I went down to actually see what was going down. Take a look. This is my video that I shot. Hey, good Saturday to you. It is 81 degrees in the border here between Arlington and Alexandria. Behind me, a Tesla dealership. This is how a bunch of area residents are choosing to spend their Saturday. Let's take a look.
Love the hat, man. Mine's coming.
Now, if you saw that, there's dudes flying Canadian flags. Some guy holding a big sign about Ukraine. What does Doge have to do with either? Canada, Ukraine? This is like the Star Wars bar scene. It's like, let's just go down and hang out with people that are probably like-minded. I mean, it was weird to watch this on a beautiful Saturday, to stand there holding signs that were all over the map. I mean, I will say this, at least they were peaceful, as the left likes to talk about protests, but it was unbelievable. All right, enough on that said. In other news, Robert F. Kennedy, who I have just given huge kudos to how he's done the job, for all the worry about the left. Oh, he's going to come in and do all this stuff, really focusing on food safety. And also now trying to figure out why we're not, remember how we talked about education? We spend all this money. What are we getting? Test scores aren't going up. Kids aren't more educated, but we're throwing good money after bad. And he picked up on a really interesting theme over at HHS. Take a look at this video that RFK put out about how he's addressing some of the concerns about spending at HHS. Take a look.
Hey, everybody. I'd like to share with you a paradox that I've encountered here in Washington, D.C. as the new secretary of HHS. Our department is filled for the most part with competent, conscientious public servants, and yet the agency has been inefficient as a whole. Over the past 4 years during the Biden administration, HHS's budget increased by 38%, and its staffing increased by 17%, but all that money has failed to improve the health of Americans. In fact, the rate of chronic disease and cancer increased dramatically as our department has grown. Our lifespan has dropped, so Americans now live 6 years shorter than Europeans. We are the sickest nation in the world, and we have the highest rate of chronic disease. The U.S. ranks last among 40 developed nations in terms of health, but we spend 2 to 3 times more per capita than those nations. As secretary, I now understand why all this money is not improving our health. HHS is a sprawling bureaucracy that encompasses literally hundreds of departments, committees, and other offices. You know how bureaucracies work. Every time a new issue arises, they tack on another committee. This leads to tremendous waste and duplication, and worst of all, a loss of any unified sense of mission.
All right, you get the point there. We're spending money and we're not getting results. That's not a partisan thing. It's not a conservative thing. Well, it kind of is. But you should care as a taxpayer that we're just throwing money at bureaucrats and bureaucracy and not getting any result. We're not getting healthier. You heard the stat there. Our life expectancy is getting worse. Where's the demand? Education, healthcare. We're paying more and getting less. It should trouble everybody. But the blob, the swamp lives off this. More money, more grants, more programs, more bureaucracy. Too many people make too much money off of that. More people getting sick, living less, not having a good education. Because then they get to come up with a new contract or program. I just think it's so cool that across the board that we're actually addressing this stuff. All right, a lot more to get into. Before I get to it, I mentioned my friend Tully Dolan. There was another passing that occurred that I want to take note of. Dick Carlson, who was is the father of Tucker Carlson, passed away last week. He led the Voice of America at a critical period. He died at 84 years old. And I want to show you how the Washington Post recognized his life. They put an obituary in. And I'm going to read you this. It says, Mr. Carlson, father of conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, defended the VOA in the years before President Trump's order to dismantle the broadcaster. Dick Carlson, a former journalist who led the Voice of America under Republican administrations decades before the GOP was shaped by hard right commentators, including his son, Tucker Carlson, and President Trump, began a push to effectively silence the U.S.-funded broadcaster, died March 24th at his home in Boca Grande, Florida. He was 84. Again, why are we having to make this political? The man lived a great life, very accomplished. And yet it's always, let's figure out how we can make this obituary political. It says, Mr. Carlson led VOA from 1986 to 1991 as its journalists and commentators chronicled epical events, including the fall of the Berlin Wall, China's deadly crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrators in Tiananmen Square, and the looming breakup of the Soviet Union that marked the end of the Cold War. He later served as ambassador to the Indian Ocean nation of the Seychelles and headed the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which helps support PBS, NPR, and other media outlets. Some GOP lawmakers have long denounced the agency for its cost to taxpayers and perceived left-leaning bias. During his tenure, Mr. Carlson stood against his own party in opposing any cutbacks in funding. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Earlier this month, Trump signed an executive order to dismantle the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which includes VOA, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, and Radio Free Asia. VOA journalists and its current director, Michael Abrowitz, are part of a lawsuit challenging the directive. Mr. Carlson did not publicly comment on Trump's effort to shutter VOA. He was also reticent to offer extensive personal views on the career of his son, a former Fox News host who often displayed strong support for Trump and his policies. This is an obituary, not a political column. Why are we not focusing on his life and his accomplishments, not your Trump derangement syndrome? I want you to understand, if you don't hate the Washington Post, you don't hate them enough. Because this is the crap. They can't help but politicize everything. I mean, if they could politicize classified ads, they would. They just don't exist anymore. This is pathetic. The man lived a storied and accomplished life. He served his country in the Navy, in the Marine Corps. He traveled extensively, great journalist and ambassador. And yet you have to make it about Trump. They can't help themselves. This is how bad our media is. I'm so glad this ties into what Caroline and those guys are doing. We need new voices. You cannot trust these folks anymore. They cannot help themselves. Anyway, I got a lot more to break down with you. I got two things before we get there. You guys know Washington costs money to run on, and the IRS has just stepped up all of its enforcement for the 2025 tax season. We are now 15 days away from April 15th. It's coming. So if you owe back taxes or unfiled returns, do not wait for the IRS to come after you. Simply avoiding your tax troubles is not what you should be doing. It's the worst thing, in fact. Get ahead of the curve. Call my friends at the folks at Tax Network USA. These guys have been in the business a long time. They know who to call, who not to call, how to get things done. They literally have a preferred direct line to the IRS. So if you can't get through, they can. And by knowing who to deal with, they know how to get the best deal for you. They've got proven strategies. They've already recovered over $1 billion. We should put them in charge of Doge, for goodness sake. These guys know exactly what to do on your behalf. Don't just go up into the fetal position and hope the IRS won't catch up with you. They will. Talk with one of their strategists. It's absolutely free. They'll stop the letters, the calls, whatever. They'll get ahead of the curve. Just call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. TN, Tax Network USA.com/Sean Spicer. Full word, no spaces, just Sean Spicer. TNUSA.com/Sean Spicer. All right. I've talked to you guys. If you've been a watcher of the show for a while, you know about my friend Leo Grillo. We were literally texting over the weekend. He's working on a bunch of projects. He's a great guy, but years ago, he was on a road trip and found a Doberman that was on the highway, underweight, clearly in trouble. He wanted to help that Doberman. He named the dog Delta, which stood for dedication and everlasting love to animals. It became way bigger. He then took that one idea, that one mission of helping one dog, and made it into helping all animals. And Delta Rescue is what became of all of that. It is the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Leo likes to remind me, not shelter, sanctuary. It relies solely on contributions from people like us. No big USAID, government contracts, political pro subscriptions, because we contribute. It's what helps Delta Rescue. And they will help all animals, dogs, cats, horses, you name it, get the nutritional care, the veterinarian care. So if you're an animal lover, do what I did. I made a personal contribution to Leo Grillo and the folks at Delta Rescue by going to deltarescue.org, deltarescue.org. And while you're there, check out the estate planning kit. It's at the top. There's a little tab that says estate planning. Click on it. If you got an old 401k or IRA, you might be able to get a tax benefit right now. Talk to your tax professional and help them in the long term make this an enduring message. Go to deltarescue.org. All right. A lot happening this week. That was all like what's already happened and what's gone on the past weekend. This week, April 2nd, Trump is calling this Liberation Day. He's going to impose tariffs all over the place. And I wrote a column about this over the weekend. Let me get to that in a second. But Peter Navarro was on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream and said that these things, they estimate that the auto tariffs, which take effect this Wednesday, will raise the government about $100 billion, and additional tariffs are going to get another $600 billion. He thinks $6 trillion over a 10-year period. They're doing this not because, I mean, think about it. They're smart people. You got people like Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick. They know what they're doing. And I think one of the things that we aren't getting told by the media that's important, as far as I'm concerned, for everyone to realize, because the question is, well, why? Why are we doing this? This is going to cost. I get it. But, you know, if you think about anything that you do in life, starting a business, working out, losing weight, is there anything that you know that's really easy that doesn't require a little bit of sacrifice? And I get it. If you're on a fixed income, low income, this is a lot harder to swallow than a lot of other things. I get it. And I'm very sympathetic for that, because we're going to have to make some choices in the next weeks and months. But so many of the things that we rely on here in America, we don't make. For a variety of reasons, they've gone overseas. And I've said this before, so you guys have heard it if you're a longtime listener. But like, think about the idea of COVID. The Chinese send COVID, and then we end up buying all of our PPE, the masks and the gloves and all that, and the drugs from them. This is literally like going to the arsonist and saying, hey, can you help me put out the fire that you started? So much of the stuff is still coming from China. So much of what we are relying on, because people find it easier to go get cheap labor or whatever. And tariffs are going to make it better for U.S. companies and more expensive for foreign stuff. So what's the incentive there? Number one, to make things here in America, to start to build things in America. Or, and this is again, let me just give you an example, because I know that in theory it's like, oh, well, that's great. But just think about the first 70 days, what's happened. Honda said, hey, we're taking the Civic that we make in Mexico and making it in Indiana because it's cheap. It'll be cheaper for us. The Taiwan semiconductor folks said, hey, we're going to move an entire plant and build it in Arizona because we'd rather ensure that we don't get hit with tariffs coming from Taiwan in. You saw Hyundai doing the same in Louisiana, Apple making a huge investment in the United States, right? These companies, Samsung, LG, are considering moving plants from Mexico to the US because it's like, hey, we'd rather have certainty of being in the US than have to worry about this. Billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of US investment is coming home because of President Trump's policies. They weren't just going to do this. They're doing it because of Donald Trump. Now, just to be clear, what that means is that there's some products that aren't home yet. It may take a little while. But one of the other things that's not being discussed that I want to make sure you understand is this. Autos, for example, there's a 10% tariff for US autos going into Europe. Okay? When he raises that here in the United States, or pick another country, but let's just stick with Europe for a second. The media keeps saying, oh, it's going to cost more. But there's something that they're not telling you. Europe can drop that rate, and it says it's open to. Malaysia, Vietnam, high tariffs. They're saying that they're willing to take them down. So just stop for a second and think about this. If you don't do this, what incentive do they have to lower their tariff? It's the way the media explains this to you is that the only solution that's going to happen is Trump will raise tariffs, everything will be more expensive, and that's it, end of story. Well, there's two things they're not telling you. Number one, manufacturing is coming back, investment's coming back into the United States. That's good. That might take some time. But what they're not telling you in the short term is that several countries, one by one, are lining up in the queue to come over and to say, hey, I want to invest in the United States. I want to take my tariff down so that you can come into our market. So it takes the tariff down. We would take ours down because they're reciprocal tariffs. Think about this for a second. What Donald Trump is saying, if you charge us 10, we're going to charge you 10. You charge us 100, we'll charge you 100. That's called fairness. He uses the word reciprocal for a reason. But if they take theirs down, we'll take ours down. So India's got a lot of things that they're charging us 100+% to come in. If we're selling them a widget for $10 just to get in the market, it's 20. Therefore, we're at an automatic disadvantage for anything they make in country. But why are we letting their stuff come into our country basically duty and tariff free? This is a question of fairness. People are saying this is protectionist. This isn't protectionist. This is actually fairness. And if he does it right, and we're already seeing indications that it's working, other countries will say, great, we'll take our tariffs down. Maybe from 10 to 2, maybe from 10 to 0. Who cares? It not only then takes our tariff back down, but it gives our folks, our ag folks, our manufacturing folks, our financial services folks, the opportunity to go into that market and to do well, make more money, create more U.S. jobs. That's good. You're not going to hear this in the Washington Post or on the Today Show because they don't want you to hear that side of things. I'm not saying it's not going to be a little disruptive and painful. I'm just saying that understand if you don't do something at some point, but I went back to my original example. Do you think that people who are trying to, work out because they want to make a team, just sit back on a couch and say, oh, I'm sure that'll just happen? No, they work hard. And the first iteration might actually cause you some pain and discomfort as you get into shape because you're trying to get something better and we're trying to get a better deal. Over the weekend, we started to see, by the way, the rollout of what appears to be at least one of 4 upcoming books on the Biden presidency, the Biden decline in the race and the way that Kamala Harris got put in. We will have some of those authors on the show in the next couple of weeks. We're going to have Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnas coming up. They're the ones that have that new book called Fight coming up. Then there's another guy named Chris Whipple, who is a leftist that has a book called Uncharted, How Trump Beat Biden, Harris in the Odds. It's funny, though. I do get a kick out of this because there's some of the reporting that says I have fresh reporting on the hour-by-hour, day-by-day basis of Biden's final day and his decline in a major story. This guy Whipple tells Playboy. Yet the same guy said nothing, right? Remember this. During the campaign, these people who want to make a ton of money and profit suddenly are going to give us insight into something that they refuse to talk about. What a bunch of hypocrites. This is interesting, though. On May 20th, there's a book that folks in Politico describe as the, quote, book that Biden allies fear the most. The original Sin book. This is from Jake Tapper. Do you understand that Tapper and the folks at CNN were complicit in covering up Biden's downfall? And they are now trying to profit on this. They are gaslighting us. What do you mean? We just started reporting on this. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. In real time, they said nothing. In fact, in some cases, they gaslit the people who brought it up. You remember that one interview where Laura Trump is saying, hey, Biden's decline. Oh, you have no right to criticize him. You don't know him. And yet, they were part of the problem. These guys are going to go out there, these 4 books, and make a ton of money. Who knows? Because I don't know how many people want to read it. But I have an advanced copy of Fight, and I'm reading it right now. It's fascinating how much stuff that they're willing to put in a book now that they didn't want to tell us then. Interesting, isn't it? Same point, though. Think of this thread, the through line with the media. How deceptive they are. How controlling they are and what they want you to see, read, and hear. Over and over again. By the way, speaking of bad media, President Trump called Christian Welker ahead of Meet the Press this weekend, maybe to give her a ratings bump. I don't know. And he said he was very angry and pissed off at Putin during this call with her. So for all the people who talk about Trump and trying to do Putin's bidding, he's made it very clear that he's not happy. And I think that's important. So it's not, they had to almost report it because they only had so much time with him and they wanted to make it clear. But I think it's interesting, despite the narrative that they want to spin you on, that Trump's doing all this bidding at the behest of Putin. He's making it very clear that that's not the case, and he's willing to up the sanctions on him. Not something you would do if you were really trying to help them. What is it? No. He also, separately, not during the call, but at the end of last week, talked about in order to review all of the monuments that were toppled during the George Floyd post-Black Lives Matter phase. All of these American statues of historical figures that were torn down, knocked down. They're part of history. And I know some people will object, but here's my question. If you don't want to repeat it, what's the one thing they say do and over again? Don't ignore it. If we want to be a better country and learn from the mistakes, some of the issues that our forefathers bore, then study them, learn from them. Don't ignore them. Don't whitewash it. It's just funny because they talk about in the media how this is Trump's attempt to preserve the view of slavery. No, it's a part of our history. In fact, the opposite would be true. If he was trying to whitewash it and get rid of it, you would say, wow, he's trying to make sure that no one knows about it. This is an important part of our history. It may not be the brightest spot in it, but how do we expect future generations of Americans to learn if we change every name, knock down every statue, and get rid of everything? It's amazing, huh? I put out a video over the weekend. I think a lot of you saw it. It's on the YouTube channel of Jasmine Crockett getting handed the baton of fake accents by Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. But that woman could not stop this weekend. She could not stop. She went out on a video and attacked my friend, I think the next governor of Florida, Byron Donalds, congressman from Florida, because his sin was marrying a white woman. Take a listen to her.
And if we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you? I'm not really sure, what it is.
Well,
but
you
I
couldn't
need
even be married to a white woman under Jim
correct,
Crow.
correct. And it took Joy to call him out. So I'm like, bruh, what are you talking about? What are you saying? He just out here, I feel like they give him his talking points and he's like, yes, master, I got it.
What? Our skinfolk and our kinfolks. Yes, master. He married a white person. I believe there's a lot of prominent black liberals who've married white people too. I don't hear her concerned with them, is there? That's just disgusting. By the way, you want to know what Byron Donalds was doing this weekend? Take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, the political war ahead of us is going to be a series of uphill battles where the left has already taken the high ground. For the past 15 months, we have become active and we have organized like never before. The first battle for our future comes in 1 month, when we take the first step to restoring America to its founding principles.
All right. That was Byron Donalds from 14 years ago in Naples, Florida, leading the charge for the Tea Party. This weekend, he announced that he was running officially for governor. Pretty amazing. So for her to talk about somehow things getting whitewashed, that's a 14-year-old tape of showing him his longstanding belief in the movement, in the cause, in his leadership. It's actually sad. And by the way, in any other circumstance, if you used words like Jasmine Crockett did, you'd be called out for it. You don't hear anything, right? No one from the media, no one on her thing saying, those are disgusting. The idea that you're saying that he's being whitewashed because he married a white woman. Nasta, skin folk ain't my kinfolk. I mean, I cannot believe no one saying a damn thing. Also over the weekend, the folks at TPUSA, Turning Point, were out doing some great work because there's an issue going on in New York, obviously, with folks that are in the country illegally. And they caught employees of Jackson Hewitt, that's a tax services company, handing out flyers to illegals that were lined up outside that hotel, the Roosevelt Hotel, where they housed all these folks on taxpayer dime, by the way. And the flyers helped them, tried to tell them how you can get money from the U.S. government. Literally. Take a look at this clip. It's unbelievable. And by the way, look what happened once they realized that she was taping this.
We do this stuff like this, like at all the shelters and stuff. But like our company, this is why we try to help people by, providing them with refunds,
This is Savannah Hernandez in front of the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. Now, we wanted to come check in on the migrant crisis, and as we were walking around, we saw a Jackson Hewitt table out here with an employee who was handing out this flyer. Now, what this flyer says is, working or not, file your taxes, and we can get the maximum refund for your family. And the paper says that if you have one child, you can get over $7,000 in a refund, and if you have up to 3 children, you can get over $14,000. So the Jackson Hewitt employee who initially handed me this paper, after finding out I was a journalist, took the paper away. That's why this one's so dirty, because a migrant ended up giving me another copy, and he stated that if he's put on camera and this goes out, that legal will have to get involved.
We do this stuff like this, like at all the shelters and stuff. But like our company, this is why we try to help people by, providing them with refunds,
So you guys are trying to help the migrants with their taxes then,
Yes.
to help them get refunds, help them get some money back from the government?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, we're just going to go try to talk to them.
Can't put my footage.
Can we take one of your papers, though, just so we can kind of... Thank you.
Actually, you should just take this one, because this one has my office information, and
Okay.
so therefore legal would have to get involved. So that's
Okay, so just wanted to give you guys an idea of, again, what migrants have been told in New York City. Now that tax season is coming up, they are being given official flyers from Jackson Hewitt themselves on how to file their taxes. We have the Trump administration that is currently in office, and they have been promising mass deportations, but in sanctuary cities like New York, where you've had over 200,000 illegal immigrants make their way to this area, the crisis is very much alive and well. Now, this shelter behind me is actually set to close in June, but you have another shelter that was just opened up in the Bronx with 2,200 beds specifically for single migrant men. So the crisis very much alive here in New York City, that has already spent $7 billion on migrants over the last couple of years. Wanted to give you guys an update as of March 2025, where we're currently at.
Pretty unbelievable, isn't it? This is a company, a U.S. company, telling these folks, hey, here's how you get money. We'll get paid, by the way. When you get paid, we'll try to get money for you after we've already given you a hotel room, probably some gift cards, a cell phone. Sometimes we work against ourselves, don't we? I couldn't believe that was happening. The other thing that's happening this week that I cannot tell you, I want you to be ready for. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, are 3 special elections. They are super important because if Democrats were to win them or get really close, we're not going to hear the end of it. But beyond just the rhetoric, I am will be concerned about the underlying political state of the movement. So let's take these in order. Well, let me walk this back for a second. Last week, there was this state Senate race in Pennsylvania. Got a bit of attention because it was a very, very double-digit Trump district that had been in GOP hands for over 150 years. There's a lot of people that I know that said there was a bad candidate. Okay, bad candidates can usually blow a decent lead, but not one that big. So I'm wondering, was he really that bad? Did they not have a good ground game? And I'm hearing all that. So maybe that's the case. Maybe this is an outlier. But this week we have 3, and let me walk through them. There's the 1st district in Florida. Now, that is the seat that was formerly held by Matt Gaetz. It's in the Panhandle, right? If you're familiar with Florida, right? It's that Panhandle area. There's a guy named Jimmy Patronis. He is running. He's the current CFO of Florida. He's run statewide twice. Very strong candidate. Knows how to raise money. A really good retailer of politics. This is a solid seat, though. Okay. And I think that Jimmy should be fine. Keep an eye on it. President Trump did a town hall for him. So that's that. The 6th district, other side of the state, Orlando kind of area, a little north, I guess. This is where Mike Waltz's district, the current national security advisor, he's in the news for Signal. You may remember him. There's a state senator by the name of Randy Fine that is running there. This is a district that Trump won by 33 points 5 months ago. A poll by Tony Fabrizio, Trump's pollster, showed Randy Fine down by 3 points. Trump won by 33. This guy's down by 3 in the latest poll by Trump's pollster. This isn't some left-wing media hack. That's concerning. Now, there are concerns about Randy Fine as a candidate and the fact that he has not raised the money that he should and the fact that Democrats are swamping this race. I think from the intel that I have gotten politically that he should be okay. But if this guy pulls out this seat by 5 or 6 points, now just to be clear, he'll be fine in the general election because once everything reverts back and they can't spend money and whatever, he'll win 25 points. But the idea the left will go nuts, just so you know, and talk about this. And that brings me to Wisconsin. There is a special election for a Supreme Court seat. Ron Johnson was on the show last week, and he told you how important this was because they can deal with redistricting in the state when it comes to the challenges that will get made, and they will impose their will. So they will allow maps that get rid of Republicans. And when you have a 2 and 3 seat majority, this matters. So that's why we should all care. Our buddy Scott Pressler was out in Wisconsin. Let me show you how he was handling this.
My fingers are red. It's currently snowing right now, but we have doors to knock and we have votes to earn. And I'm asking every single voter, you make a plan to vote on Tuesday, April 1st. And if you can't vote on April 1st, then make a plan to vote early. Go to myvote.wi.gov. You plug in your information for your home address and you'll find out your early voting center. Bring your voter ID because we still have voter ID in Wisconsin for now, and vote yes to the constitutional amendment, which will enshrine voter ID into the state constitution. Let's go, Brad. Get everyone you know out to vote.
So you saw that he's out there pushing for Brad Schimmel, the Republican, to be on the court. But he's absolutely right. There's a lot at stake, voter ID, redistricting, whatever. I cannot emphasize enough how important this race is. It's going to be tight. Polling is very, very difficult. But look, you want to know why I'm worried? You might say, oh, Sean, you're just being worried and you're alarmist. Last week, President Trump asked Elise Stefanik to stay in the House of Representatives, not become his UN ambassador, because they were worried about how close the margins are coming. Keep in mind, part of the reason that we're actually getting stuff passed isn't because of our majority necessarily. It's because 2 Democrat House members have died in office in the last 2 months. That's the majority. We got lucky. Pardon me, my French there. I'm not wishing that anybody passes away or gets sick. But that's the only reason we're able to get this stuff done. God rest their souls. But this is unbelievable. We're playing with fire, my friends. We need to get on our game. If you know people in Florida, if you know people in Wisconsin, get them out to vote. This is important. Democrats and the media will make all sorts of hay about this. It was about Elon. It was about Doge. I don't know. I mean, a million things. Don't let it happen. Call your friends, text your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. I don't care who they are, but we need to make sure that everybody understands the importance of these special elections and how they impact all of us so that people in Wisconsin understand that the majority is at stake if they get out there and allow the left to win this. So we have a lot to cover this week. As I said, April 2nd, Liberation Day. Nancy Mace will be with us later in the week. We've got a lot to break down. Remember, if you're interested in getting my books, you can go to SeanSpicer.com, sign up for the newsletter. There's an About section where you can talk about the books. And then on April 9th, we're hosting a special Zoom call at 8 p.m. in the evening. If you want to text RSVP to 276-500-1185. I'm doing a special Zoom to talk about the products that I'm using now that counter the Walmarts and the Targets that are all Maha type things that make you a better and stronger consumer. Vote with your wallet. Vote for Maha approved stuff that's safer, that's a check against the big left woke companies. Go text RSVP to 276-500-1185. Again, I got a new newsletter dropping tomorrow. Sign up for that. It's free at SeanSpicer.com. I appreciate you kicking off with your week with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.